Hey everybody, I'm Nico.
And I'm TK.
And that makes this X's for Podcast, your one and only show where we react to some Marvel books, some DC books, and for the first time, I want to say in 4 months, I got the intro right off the fucking bat.
I feel like there's been a couple other ones that you've nailed.
Well, that is very generous of you, sir, and I appreciate that. But I want to start with everyone. We were the internet's a crazy place, right? And sometimes stuff happens and you just kind of got to roll with it, right? So the internet decided to be a vengeful creature today, and so we will not have the amazing that is Chad from Grey Malkin with us today, but we're going to do an amazing makeup episode with one of my absolute favorite voices in all of fandom. This is a great way to segue into what we're talking about. But like, one of the things that's always crazy is like, you wish for a book, right? Like,
yes.
you wish for a creator to get on a title.
Yeah.
Right. But like, one of the things is like, sometimes I wish for people to cover books I love. Or like, I want other creators to be part of things. And so like, one of the exciting things is like, I want people to be on this show. And I think Chad is just one of the best voices in X-Men fandom, and there's a lot of them out there right now. So,
and I mean, when you said it's a good way to segue into the books, what I thought you were talking about is we have the crushing disappointment of not getting to have Chad on today, and these books may or may not be crushingly disappointing.
Yeah, well, and so like that is a thing. That is a part of the problem.
There we go.
I want to say first and foremost. Oh, you go.
Sorry, I was gonna say really quick. This was actually a less crushingly disappointing week.
You know what? I will say this is my favorite issue of Jerry Duck. So sorry, I didn't mean to say that. This was my favorite issue of X-Men in this run by far. This was the problem is what it made allusions to was not good.
So anyway, but do the rest of the intro. But I think I can already see we're on the same page,
right? So like I'm a huge fan of Grey Malkin because one of the things I love is that they go so deep into like obscurity for beautiful things. Because in obscurity lie the beautiful things, right?
And I love the classics. I love when we go vintage. I like when we go old school. I mean, we can't forget that these are our roots.
Oh, yeah.
And, so much of the stuff that Grey Malkin covers is some of the, like, really wild galaxy brain stuff that, like, here's what I'll say. I always respect that DC never lets that stuff go. And I follow Morrison's career, so like I got into the fact that DC never lets that stuff go by Morrison pulling like things like Batman of Zur-En-Arr in order to tell a story that is like mind-blowing, because otherwise that is just a really stupid, silly thing that happened decades ago, and that can be fine. But if you have it and you can play with it, like my thing is Alpha, the giant baby that Magneto made that then turned him into a giant baby. The fact that we never talk about that, that we just let that he's not, we found out this week that Xavier's got yet another secret that we're going to be like, oh, he's actually even more like, we added a new sub basement to being the soul sucking worst.
Magneto and Alpha's relationship is the ultimate gay catty relationship. Yeah, well, I'm going to turn into an even gianter baby.
Yeah, it's just babies all the way down. And the fact that, like, if Grant Morrison were writing this, the secret would be that he's had Alpha waiting, Xavier's had Alpha waiting in the wings this whole time to re-baby Magneto, because having a baby's so hot right now.
I mean, that's why every Disney movie starts with one, right?
Blam. You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah, right. I've uncovered the secret. I do want to, so like, I really love that Chad's going to be on soon. And maybe he can even pick the episode for us. He'll tell us what he wants to be on for, and we'll do a special.
Go.
Because like I love voices, and like I just want to say big congrats to Dylan, Warpath Dylan, another successful Uncanny experience on the books. I saw all of the beautiful photos from World's Most Beautiful, Incredible Drag Queen, Demanda Martini. And the unbelievable crowd of incredible people like series former contributor Dante getting out there and having the time of their lives right? Cannot be more encouraging of fandom in all of its beautiful forms. So people like Chad, who, technology is so stupid, could not be with us today, is so great for being out there and representing the parts of fandom we don't. Because who I will say does not represent my fandom. I don't know why he has to do this to us. Okay, but I think Tom Brevoort, who, if you abbreviate his name, it says Tomb, who is of course the tombstone on my fandom some days. Why he's got to have an opinion on Spider-Man anymore?
Oh no, I didn't get this one.
I functionally think that married couples make for great stories, just not this married couple. Peter Parker and Mary Jane fundamentally, when put together, immediately become no longer good for either one's storytelling. People who like these sorts of stories don't like them together. And so the number of stories that can be told with a married couple are plentiful. But the number of stories that can be told with this married couple are few and defeating.
I love living in a world where everybody is allowed to have their own opinion and the government cannot put you in a prison for the rest of your life for having one. I'm just saying, if every once in a while we tried it out, just to confirm it doesn't work, but we don't reverse the decision, this would be where I would start.
I am so frustrated because, and this is again why shows like Gray Malkin, who can, we're talking about what we're going to do as our next big back dive, because we love doing back dives. That's what we do. I mean, we're both tops. We love doing back dives. So we wind up in this position as tops, where we want to talk about the past and we want to look at what was so good and so cool, right? And sometimes you look back at an era and you fall for it. Like you read an issue of Spider-Man that has Spider-Man with Mary Jane, and you're like, oh, that's a marriage I love now. That's a relationship I believe in. And so then when you go to the present and they're like, no, there's no value to that relationship. It actually does take the sleuthing of the internet, of every podcast show, to put it together and make it happen sometimes, I swear.
I also really want to say, what a weird thing to say when the flagship book driving the publishing company that you work for is a Spider-Man book where Spider-Man and Mary Jane are, by definition, married and existing in that zone of, they're married. It's not, they're 21, they got married young, and who knows what'll happen.
It is Britney Spears Chicka in the zone.
They are fully 40s, children. This is MC2 all over again. And again, welcome to our world. We been loved Peter Parker and Mary Jane married for quite some time. I think that is, of course it's an insane thing to say, but it is along the lines of the other insane things that he has said. And we've talked about kind of this exact thing, this idea that people don't want to see that, but I just can't stress enough. I need you to sit down with me, Tom, and show me the numbers, because I do not believe that such a substantial number of the buyers of these books are people who are young and unmarried, who want to see that reflected in their character. And especially people who want to buy Peter Parker, because young people today got to grow up with Miles Morales. They got to grow up with Spider-Gwen. They also, now they have Miguel, because a lot of them came into it from Spider-Verse. I really think that this is the most important time for those two to be married.
And, it's because young, brilliant women like Brie Larson read Wonder Woman, Captain Marvel, and Orania growing up. She loved reading female comic books and female-led comic books. And so she was a big fan. And when you take the woman's agency out of the story, because when she's just that woman in the background, she's always the side piece. But when she's married to Peter, we remember the value of her importance in his life. And when you devalue a character, because we don't seem to have room for characters when they're just girlfriends, the same way we do when they're girlfriends versus when they're wives.
Yeah.
You're taking women like Brie Larson, the future champion of female superheroes, out of the equation.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I point to MC2, where Mary Jane is at her most in the Scooby Gang and active, despite being completely unpowered. She is not Jackpot. She does not get into a suit. She survived this to get into her 40s and is now old enough that she's like, yeah, I'm not fucking scared of any of these villains. No, I'm not going to let you talk to my daughter like that. Like, she's the Watcher. She's the Xander. She's all of the humans that can't necessarily suit up and go fight, but are on the level and are good to go. And that's her married to Peter, when it's not that. And this is maybe specific to Mary Jane in a lot of ways, just because of how a lot of people perceive her and write her. But yeah, I don't think she gets the same thing that there are some girlfriends who manage to make it through. But it's a weird role to be in, and I don't buy it. I also, I really think that for people our age, there was kind of if Brand New Day hadn't happened, or One More Day, if One More Day hadn't happened and they had stayed married.
I believe it's called One Day More, and it takes place against the barricade.
Which one's which?
One Day More is Les Mis.
Okay, good. All right. I always get them confused, and I always feel like an idiot.
Kevo is slow clapping off air.
I do see that. It makes me very happy. Yeah, but I feel like in that same way that like young girls would have read, female heroes 10, 15 years ago and been like, I aspire to that. Young men ought to have seen a Spider-Man grow up and continue to grow with his wife, rather than doing this whole constant put him in jeopardy thing. It's also weird after we established with like Pam and Jim that it is completely possible to do couple that stays together, has storylines together, can even be in couple jeopardy, can even do, not everything is always great storylines, but they stay together. Like, that's them as a unit becomes part of the canon. I think it's weird that we so rarely do that. Every day I wake up worried for Rogue and Gambit. But married couples that stay together are, I think, important for how comic readership ages, and the fact that a lot of us get married and do stay together. And it shouldn't be Reed and Sue, because they should get divorced.
Well, and I don't want to get too real on air for a second, but there is also something I hate about exes can't be friends without being exes.
Yes.
And like, not being weird, but like, we've traversed some interesting places and you're still my favorite human. And so, you can go on a journey and change your status, but it doesn't mean that like when you're together, it's like, oh, well, now we have to take our penises out because we've once taken them out together. So now once is always.
Who weirdly gets this right? This is like it's one of his things. He's doing okay.
Is it Wolverine? Because
no.
Other than Jean, he's actually fine just hanging out with Yukio, hanging out with Storm, hanging out with lots of ladies.
Very good example. That one is so dependent on writing, though, because so many people get to write him. I was saying McKay with Scarlet Witch and Vision.
Oh, that's a really great example. Yeah, there's no chemistry between any two characters in that book.
I mean, that might be what is helping the issue, but they do have a good working relationship and rapport around knowing each other, and there is no sexual tension, although you are kind of pointing out that I think the reason there's no sexual tension is because nobody has any chemistry in that book. Well,
and I do just want to point out that to that end, it is impossible to be in a room with this gentleman and not have sexual chemistry with him. So it's not all just that, because like there's plenty of exes that like I can't be in the room with them without being like, you should be a real good boy right now. Like, there's plenty of guys that like I automatically snap back into that. And I understand that that is a great place to generate stories from. But what breaks my heart is there aren't more stories about people who are just fine keeping their pants on,
Yeah.
or even characters who recognize the validity of sexual gratification from equal consenting partners, but have no requirement of emotional reciprocity. We don't see enough Logan saying, Storm and I are no longer intimate, but sometimes when we both need to blow off steam, we take it out on each other in a beautiful way in the garden. Like, we need more of that, though.
I mean, I agree, but I feel like that's a world also in which Scott, Jean, and Logan are still a throuple. Like, there's so many relationship expressions that Marvel is, I mean, at this point, terrified of even letting be quiet on panel, like proven by a data page thing. You know, for all that I will take to my grave that Scott, Jean, and Logan were absolutely together, Scott and Emma were still together, like, that's all. I think there's clear evidence for it on page, but it's very subtle evidence. It's very, there's no, like, long treatise. There's cute little lines, and there's panels, and there's, connected rooms on a graph, but even that, the idea that is too much is wild to me, because we really actually do need all of these more advanced forms of romantic expression, sexual expression, just existence. Nobody is asexual, and like that's never explored in any. I mean, I'm sure somebody. I'm not saying that no character is canonically asexual. I'm saying it's never explored. It's never talked about, and it's all of these things are aspects of life that the comic buying audience experiences in their day-to-day, and the whole thing that I think so many of us love. Yeah, of course there's escapism, but it's the idea of escapism that you have anchors in. So it is like, oh, I'm a poly person and my favorite 3 superheroes are in a relationship. Like, there's my escapism and also my relatability. And I just like, man, this era is all about not doing those things.
Well, and also because I think part of the other human experience that's missing is adequate, accurate newness. One of the things that is so important to recognize is when somebody meets Wolverine and is like, I might date you. They're always like, but I know who you are. Most people, when you start a new relationship, have no the fuck clue who you are. And like, I have 0.1% notoriety as a result of being Nico Action, creator, singer, full-time model. But when occasionally somebody meets me and they're like, oh no, I watch your show. And I'm like, ew, no, fuck off. Oh, you subscribe? No, come here, we'll have sex. Like, there's a difference. And something that I find that these comics always seem to slot into really quickly is the new relationships always take on a characteristic of familiarity that I find a little unbecoming. And maybe to point out the example that breaks that trope from something we read today, but certainly doesn't avoid all of the problems with it, are Grey Crow and Quanon in the pages of X-Men, which is like the 4th title to carry their love, which I'm a big fan of. I think their relationship is beautiful. You should never break them up. It would be a disaster. They are an incredibly, and like, I feel bad about the version I went to compare it to. I went to compare it to another woman with Asian hair and her beautiful native male partner, Storm and Forge, a relationship that through then I thought should never end. Years have gone by, what they've done. Everybody's better off on their own. But I kind of think that Grey Crow and Quanon, like, that is, it's so hot.
I love it. I think it's really funny. I will say a little touch that I feel like McKay put in there that I really like is this idea that if they're not together, they might kill everybody. Like, if the two of them break up, it really might be a murder spree on both ends throughout the world.
Or
which
how
I think
about
is just very funny.
She's super okay with him doing crimes.
Yeah, that's
and then just like comes to be an X-Man the next day.
Yeah, she's like, okay, you gotta go rob banks with Amy Voight. Ah, what a bitch. dying to see a panel where Amelia Voigt discovers that Conan of all people calls her Amy Voigt.
I just need to point out that I think that by American television standards, the level of characterization and the quality of performance that's being put into these two characters in this title is so extraordinary. It could only be played in America by Kira Sedgwick and Tony Shalhoub. That is the level of piles of Emmys.
I'm literally looking at these panels and I'm so angry at you for suggesting that.
I'm just saying, there's some USA TNT we know drama.
You. I do get you. Yes.
But so let's get to the other thing.
Yeah.
Okay. I believe myself a very buff man. I like to think of myself as a muscular fellow. I
remember the flexing is tough when it's the portrait mode.
Right.
I can't see them. Like
they're 10 times larger than my head. You just can't see.
Right.
But like, I would be very comfortable standing next to perhaps Tony Shalhoub and being like, I'm a buff gentleman. But if you put, Callum von Moger next to me, I'm going to be like, hello, I'm fat. And so you have to be careful about what things you compare to each other. You know what I mean? If you put me next to Alicia Silverstone and Clueless, I'm not going to be everything I want to be to this generation. But if you put me next to Iggy Azalea in her racist period, I look great. So I think what I'm saying is this issue was great until you compared it to two of the finest issues in the history of the medium.
I remember back in the day thinking it was very brave of Hickman, bordering on cocky,
bordering on egocentric,
to say, I will do the next follow-up to the Silent Nuff. The Silent Nuff said issue, I mean, like, it is, when we say canon, sometimes we mean like, oh, is it true today that they actually had sex? Sometimes when we say canon, we are talking about the Bible. The silent issue of New X-Men is biblical to a long-term X-Men fan. This is one of the most important. This is iconic. And I mean, like, again, I'm always going to take it back to us doing MC2 coverage. We have read other Nuff Said issues. It is a really cool initiative, but the initiative is not iconic. That issue is iconic. And I thought it was implausible, not impossible, implausible when Hickman said he was going to do it again. I will say a lot of time had passed. He is somebody that I kind of look at as an inheritor of the sort of energy and thought that Morrison brought to comics. And he picked a writer whose stylization is on par with Frank, or an artist whose stylization is on par with Frank Whiteley. Different entirely, but like I think they're two people who I'm like, when I hear they're doing the character redesign for whatever the new book is, I get really excited. Russell Dauterman, Frank Whiteley, Jamie McKelvey, Chris Anka. When I see their names on the redesign especially, I get really excited. So like I said, implausible, but I did believe that it could happen. And lo and behold, 20 years later, it did. We let 20 years pass between Psychic Rescue, Silent Nuff Said issues.
I love everything you said, and I was trying to it's so hard because what I was saying about Chad earlier this episode is, it's truest of you and Kevo, where sometimes I just need 8 minutes to digest what you guys said on air.
Sure.
Because you sparked something in my brain, and longtime listeners and people who listen to just that. So I've started talking to somebody that's super cool, and they watched an episode yesterday, and it was their first episode, and they were like, gosh, you get so passionate about Batman, jeez. And I was like, yes, I do. There are certain topics that it does not matter what we're discussing, certain things are going to come up no matter what. So when we do an actual episode about those things, well, fuck, right? So this episode actually gets to discuss Batman. So mentioning Batman isn't special. This episode mentions X-Men. So mentioning X-Men isn't special. So I guess it has to be the third one, Tori Amos. And if I said to you that they were doing a musical stage adaptation of Halloween and a musical stage adaptation of Psycho, for me, if it was going to be from our stables of brilliant creators, I would want Bjork on the Psycho musical, and I would want Tori Amos on the Halloween musical. But if you put them on the other books, if you put them on the other musicals, I'd be really frustrated. And I don't know that I feel Tori Amos has Norman Bates in her musical expression. And so to that end, I thought X-Men #5 had the best fucking art. It was 4? Was it 4? I'm so sorry. Well, then everything about this episode's wrong. But I thought that this issue of X-Men had the best art for itself possible.
You were totally right. It was 5. I had it mislabeled in my catalog.
Hey, that means this 10 got a 5 right. Hey.
We need the triple horn sound. Kevo,
I can do it.
We're going to create a soundboard for the show.
And 18 people will log off.
No, you're joking, but I would really like a soundboard. So
I know I'm not joking. We're going to do it.
I'm down. I'd love to have a video clipboard, but
Yeah.
we're going to keep working.
Yeah.
I thought that X-Men 5 had the best art I've seen in a minute on a Marvel book. Like, it was so right. It was so my style. It reminded me so much of I'm having trouble talking about how much I loved All In. But like, it had such perfect art. And then I thought Storm had the worst matched artist on a Marvel big name launch since Greg Land was on anything. I hated it was Douderman, right? No, not Douderman. It was
Vernick.
Vernick. Thank you. And I was about to say, and that's what got me there. When you said they chose Douderman for the inheritor of all things quietly, I was like, yes, the way Dragotta used to be the fill-in for Allred. Like, so have you read all of Ecstatics?
Yeah, in my life.
So then you've read Dragotta filling in for Allred.
Yes, that I know I have read.
Well, and I'm glad you said absolutely, because that's the guy who designed the Absolute Batman character. That is the guy who came up with that fucking chunky logo. And my whole thing is that he designed it as a battering ram. It's a different kind of Batman. It's battering man. And like, it's different. And like, I really felt like Vernick is a disciple of Douderman in the way that Douderman is a disciple of Quietly. But I felt like where the art on X-Men elevated me to the idea of the cerebral, I was disappointed by the art in Storm, though X-Men did have the moments that weren't tent poles, the moments that weren't like, oh, look, I'm matching the issue. Cassandra Nova's back, which never bring up Cassandra Nova with me. You've missed the mark if you are bringing up Cassandra Nova. You can use her once every 7-8 years as a reference, and you can use her as a fill-in once every 15 years, and even then, you are pushing my very kind limits.
I really like Cassandra Nova, the hero from Marauders. I just felt that didn't quite go where I wanted it to go in kind of a cool way, because at the time,
Venomore, where is she?
At the time, I thought Krakoa would go on longer and we would get Cassandra Nova back as a hero. The fact that we're going right back to villain again, like I know eventually we'll get Apocalypse back and he'll just be totally evil again. And there's a lot of villain stuff that I'm not particularly impressed with. And I really have to agree. So the thing about Storm, the thing that I just really breaks my heart, because there's a lot to say that is positive about the book, but if you look at those credits, There are 2 women who did a variant cover, and there is 1 woman, Annalise Bissa, who is the associate editor at Marvel. So like, I'm very happy she is a high-powered woman there and has a great job. But like, the day-to-day intimate workings of this book, I don't know. But essentially, functionally, producing this on the credits page, the only woman is essentially Annalise Bissa. For Storm, that does not feel right to me. And Murewa Ayodele being a black man, incredibly important. Like a black person writing.
An African-born writer, I believe,
yes,
if I'm not mistaken, and that is such an important thing when you're talking about an African-raised character.
Yeah. And you know, that's I went with black because Storm's ethnic history is very complicated and it's a lot of stories there. And I don't know everything about Murewa Ayodele's background, so but like, it's definitely that's a great thing. So much better than just having like Jed McKay write the Storm book. But Declan Shalvey's writing Mystique. Like, you know, I go on my list, even people that I absolutely love, like Jason Lowe writing Dazzler. It's just, there are not enough women in the room. And, you know, I even would say, like, let's strike a blow at this idea that unless the writer is the person whose identity matches the energy of the book in whatever way, let's have more of the let's put some of the onus on the artists as well. So I would have been just as happy with a black woman being the artist on this book, any woman being on this book. But really, I mean, ideally, I would have liked to have seen a black woman writing this and a black woman doing at least, you know, coloring, if not doing the pencils on it. To me, that doesn't seem, it seems insane that we're not doing that.
This is the first time that I thought to myself, I don't think you should describe a book with a black lead character as having a colorist. But beyond that, I really hear what you're saying, in part because while the voicing of a character is so definitive and so important, another important part is the iteration of the character visually. And when you get into the idea of somebody who is used to looking at people who look like that character, it's important. You know, like, you know, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it. The most important young adult comic book of all time, Kid Riot, written by this handsome gentleman, Nico Vasillo. Hey, what's up?
Co-written.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Also co-written by a very handsome man, Kevo. Kevo, one word. It's like Cher. Cher Bono. I hope everybody saw the new episode of Only Murders, which I laughed till I cried. One of the things that was always very prevalent to me was that our brilliant artist, Taryn is a very proud member of the queer community, wearing a lot of different badges in that you know, incredible community. And he always draws characters a little bit like himself, which is really cool, because one of the things I love is that Taryn's perspective when he is infusing characters with his own level of realism is that it elevates the conversation about what a person looks like. When it's a book like Kid Riot, which the whole focus is on multiculturalism and multipluralism and seeing the adventures of an ethnically diverse group of people, seeing traces of a single artist is really beautiful. But when the book is maybe meant to focus on a group of a specific ethnicity, and the artist's primary perspective is not from that culture, what you wind up missing out on is the details that make it real. I don't want to hear somebody say, oh, Iceman was a guest judge on Drag Race, so you know he's gay. I want to hear Iceman was watching Dragula with his good Judies, and then I'll know that that person sucks dick for fun. And like, that's what I think was missing from the exquisite presentation of what was poster after poster, what was Splash genius moment after splash genius moment. I swear to God, I've maybe never bought a book that looked more like a movie in my entire life. But there was something where oh God, I just wish George Perez drew this.
I get what you're saying there. I mean, I loved Lucas Vernick on, like, for instance, Immortal, a book where everybody is often in tableau. Although weirdly, like, I mean, so I love his work when it's just like Emma being a hot bitch on her seat at the Quiet Council. And what was really shocking to me is over time, over that last year where Vernick was on a lot of stuff, I really did grow to love his action sequences. I think here, again, I think part of it is that it just might have made more sense with a black woman on it. His Lucas Vernick's expertise is in hot bitches. And I don't just mean women. I mean any character that he draws is just going to be hot as fuck. And of course you want that for Storm because she's a goddess. But there is a je ne sais quoi when it comes to Storm's first solo title in a very long time that has a lot of heavy lifting to do, that I just don't feel is present here.
If I may, just to add to your point before you continue,
please.
I am lucky enough to have had coffee and meals and a lot of opportunities to speak with a particularly brilliant comic book cavalcade of artists, the sort of queer New York scene. And in that opportunity, I have gotten to have a number of conversations with Phil Jimenez, where I've said to him, you know, one of the most beautiful men to ever draw comics ever. You make everybody look like the fullest briefed underwear model ever. And when you draw men, it is certainly exquisite, but you so rarely draw a Daredevil. Why is that? And he said, well, it's because it's clear. I hate drawing Daredevil. That whole costume is red, top to bottom. There's no definition. There's no change. There's no opportunity to engage with the idea of the costume. And hearing him say that, where was the opportunity to engage with the quality of Storm's costuming here? Like, Vernick is such a genius of design, of perspective, but like, this book sought to tell a very human specific, limited perspective, honest story about one woman's ascent to godhood. The godhood is in her personage, not in the setting. The book put an artist designing godhood as a setting, not as a personage. I think the mistake is in having Mark Buckingham draw Miracle Man and Vernick draw this, and not having Vernick on Miracle Man written by Alyssa Wong, and not having Mark Buckingham, who by the way is a genius writer as well, but drawing this for somebody who is a brilliant black woman with a voice straight out of Africa, ready to provide that perspective, though the writing here was certainly not the problem. Nor was the art, the vibe.
No, yeah. It's not that no thing is bad. It just does not quite match what my expectations were.
Yes.
For a Storm book, I would have loved to see this pair on anybody else. I don't want to just like say Bishop because it's a black man. Maggot could have been cool. Like I don't, or anybody that they want. I just feel like Storm kind of deserved. Let's pull out all the stops. Let's make this the book that honors Storm in every way that she is supposed to be honored. I don't feel this team matches that criterion. And then there's things like this frenzy is not recognizable because of the X Factor situation. And it makes X Factor, which is a book that to me is not looking good, in that same way that don't allow yourself to be compared to the other two silent psychic rescue issues. Dangerous to allow yourself to be compared to Ecstatics.
I want to add to that. It's also dangerously irresponsible as a creator to recklessly compare yourself to anyone. My favorite silent issue is actually Exiles. I think that Judd Winnick is one of the finest people to ever write at both companies.
And a really great Real World cast member.
In my top 20, and that is,
Top 10.
My top number 1 Real World cast member of all time is so questionable, but my number 2 is super sexy, so I don't feel bad about it. My number 2 is David, because
yeah. Okay, the audience doesn't know that. I know this. Yeah, go ahead.
But number 1 taught me how to say the phrase "you stupid bitch" in exactly the right cadence at all times.
I think any gay cast member from the first 10 years or so is never a questionable choice, because they really were out there doing the heavy lifting for all of us.
As a 9-year-old, I thought I was going to marry Dan. I thought, I really thought my life was done. I thought I'd met the man of my dreams, and I knew that he would love me because he was so beautiful that he would see my heart.
Yeah.
And then he made that stupid podcast with Julie. And now I need to question everything he does, because this is a Melissa Stan cast.
Truly forever. I thought I was going to marry Danny. I was older and should have known better, but Kevo gets where I'm coming from.
You mean my Twitter follower, Melissa Howard? I love so much. And obviously, if you're going to be talking about the Real World, I have to bring up my love for Danny, my love for New Orleans, my love for Melissa, my love for Real World New Orleans Homecoming.
I also just want to say that Melissa is maybe married into the greatest rock, like one of the greatest rock bands in history. Like, oh my God, you don't understand. I was a Jersey scene kid. And so like going to Convention Hall, going to Warped Tours, going to Surf and Skate, getting so wasted at 16 years old on the Asbury Beach that police officers were like, even we don't want to help you. I mean,
that still happens today. Let's be real.
That's what I'm saying.
I would like to point out now you're there to hold me up.
But
so you can just charm your way out of it.
How did we get to the Real World?
Judd Winnick wrote the perfect,
yes. He wrote the Exile. Thank you. Yeah. Let's get.
Well, so one of the things that winds up happening when you think about an issue like X-Men and Storm, like to make the dual comparison, I found myself a little frustrated by the consistency of the beats in Storm. I kind of felt like this told every Storm story ever in a single issue in a way that was hard to process very quickly. When you're thinking about the quality of a story being reiterated, especially one like the Nuff Said trope or Storm as a trope, you wind up finding yourself in a pattern of recognizable storytelling. When you see a repeated story about Quentin Quire, that's for the cool kids. When you see a repeated story about Jane Thor, that's for the cool kids. Did I just mention 2 people who teamed up repeatedly in the Jason Aaron runs? Oh no. But like, when you tell a very familiar Storm story, it winds up making it feel clear that editorial did not give you the room to grow. And so as a show that has personally, Tom, we are literally here to give you, we'll put you right in. We'll give you a Dreamcast seat. Like, we are here to let you have full control. Tom, we do not think you are a bad editor. We do not think you are a bad man or an untalented professional. We believe you have achieved the greatest seat in the history of a medium by hard work and talent. What we don't is agree with you about any of your opinions. So we would love to give you the respect of asking you questions and hearing it. It's not that we think Tom Brevoort is untalented. What an unbelievably accomplished man. It's just that I'm Nico and no one is Karen Berger.
And I'm TK and I just don't agree with any of this shit. Here we are.
So
sorry.
So hit me, Storm, X-Men, do it.
Yeah, I don't know that I have a ton more. I mean, like, so with this X-Men issue apes the Psychic Rescue Nuff Said silent style, but then immediately is not silent, which to me is a real admission of a lack. If you, I maybe not even a lack, because listen again, like, I'm not here to say that Jed MacKay isn't talented, but maybe a fear. Like trust yourself that you could have at least done a solid chunk of this truly silent. And I get, like, I will say I love you for inoculating the audience against this with the Quentin Quire line that, like, it's me, I'm not going to be silent. But
oh, wait till you get to all of my quotes from Absolute Power number 4. Oh my god.
But that doesn't quite do it for me. That can't quite excuse the situation that we're in. This Sabretooth, after the run that we just had with Sabretooth throughout Krakoa, this voice is not really... I mean, I know it's Quentin's voice of Sabretooth, but I still don't... Sabretooth doesn't talk like that or function like that, and I don't believe... What is that eyebrow raise?
Nothing.
Okay. I don't believe that Sabretooth functions like this. Even in Quentin's mind, I feel like Quentin's fear of Sabretooth. So anyway, I just have a lot of little things like that it made it really difficult to get behind this book. I will say I do really think that Ryan Stegman is so up to the job of drawing a silent psychic rescue that I wish he'd gotten the chance to do a little bit more heavy lifting there. And as far as X-Men goes, that's that. With Storm, yeah, I mean, I really think you're right. It's funny. This also got me thinking about the thing that we've been talking about, where so much of DC is retellings of Batman's origin story, and like some of them are like kind of become canon or get rolled into canon. Storm is a great character to do retellings of her origin story, but instead what seems to happen is we do echoes of her origin story, like just moments in which she is yet again the single goddess person showing up to take care of everyone and everything. I love that role for her. I think we can get there in maybe 4 pages if we really need to. So then what are we left with for the rest of the time? Also, just do want to say hi to Dreamer and DC Comics, because Dreamer and DC Comics is my favorite.
Okay, is this it? Are we moving to Absolute Power number 4?
Do you have anything more to say? So for me, I'm going to give X-Men a C+, B-. Storm, I'm going to give a B, B-.
I'm going to give X-Men a B+, but I'm really going to give it an A, because I don't know that I have felt this kind of joy from Jed MacKay in 2 years.
I will definitely give you that for sure.
The art was probably the best art in an issue of X-Men since Lionel Francis Yu drew for me.
Okay.
That really one of the best artists I have seen in a minute. I felt like I was reading Walta for the first time in a really long time. Walta, who did the incredible Magneto run around Axis. Truly genius. I thought Storm was a B-. Everybody had the best intentions, but the greatest intentions in the universe just do not bring up the grade.
Yep.
I also want to say hi to Dreamer at DC, because let me tell you, Absolute Power number 4 was my pick of the week, and then I read All In, which was my pick of the week.
Dreamer asked, have you read the last issue of Absolute Power? Clearly you did, because you're reviewing it, but I think Dreamer should have stayed dead, even though I'm a big fan. So yes, we did read it, because we are covering it. I will say, diving right into Absolute Power, which I did love, but this issue is where I saw how DC's plan has weaknesses as well. I think they outweigh the benefit, or the benefits outweigh the downsides in how DC did this event versus how, for instance, Marvel is doing Venom War, which is interminable. This was a little bit rushed. This 4th issue, a lot of stuff happening, like literally panel to panel. You're like, I think Batman just traveled 30 miles, but like, just like time, like on foot. Like, anyway, Dreamer coming back felt very telegraphed. And some of that could be that I now know, like, I've just read so many comics, watched so many shows. The idea that, like, the person with dream powers that's, like, been in somebody's dreams since she died is going to be in the dream world, rebuild themselves, and come back out. That felt very exactly what was going to happen the minute she died. So, as awesome as this was, it did start to feel a little bit like it's moving so fast. It is so sure of the things that have to happen that it's kind of telegraphing them so that it can get right to them. But I did overall really love it.
And it's one of those things where, like, I can't help but give Dreamer in DC Comics a lot of credit. This opinion, and I cringe so hard at Super Sans when Dreamer and John were basically like fan fiction. Yeah, there was stuff that I thought didn't work. There was a lack of fluidity, and like, I'm such a fan of the things I'm a fan of. I sometimes, even when on this show, I'm like, that was terrible. I would not have done that. And then I'm still like, the book gets an A-. The thing that this book had that nothing has had for me in so long was a sense of mindless joy.
Mindless fun too.
Fun, yes.
Because I would have argued with you on joy a little bit, because there is some joy, especially. I think you're going to talk about
ring.
There's silliness. There's some really good for me. The joy, and like, this is so weird because it's somebody who's just coming. It's really like me living vicariously through your joy, or like getting joy because I'm educated through you. It's that panel with Nightwing leading everybody, and even Bruce is behind him. This is look at him getting choked up over there. This is really, like, among other things, it's such a huge step for Nightwing being one of the big boys, and he's earned it. And the fact that, like, Batman doesn't have to say anything, we don't need to have an argument where he's like, I'll let you take the reins this time, but it's always me. No, just like, Dick had this one in hand the whole time. God, I can't believe I just said that. Dick Grayson was the leader this whole time and had this covered. So that was, for me, one of those moments of real joy. But a lot of it was moments that were not particularly joyous, but really fun. Amanda Waller bitch slapping Green Arrow. That's fun.
The moment that I literally, my poor husband, a couple of times was like, you're gasping so much, I keep thinking something's wrong, honey.
Yeah.
The most I gasped the entire day was when like, the odds are 1 in 150,000 opened a Black Hand in DC Heroes and Villains today. Black Hand being my second favorite Green Lantern villain of all time. Just an absolute king among villains. By my Black Hand, the dead shall rise. One of the things I love the most in the world. Could not be happier, but my comic book moment of 2024 at the moment is, I only have so much willpower, man. I freaked at that line with all my heart. And then when Hal felt joyous over a Green Lantern and Flash team up that wasn't Barry and Hal, the way that struck at people like Alex Ross, who won't draw Kyle, who won't draw Wally if he can avoid it. Like, the moment of Hal taking help from Jay and Wally was just like, and that it was Airwave. That Airwave
is that how it works, by the way? Can you just, like, run up to a Green Lantern and be like, I am also into this, and the construct is more powerful?
Why don't you run up into me and see what happens?
Deal. Did not know that was part of the mechanics. Yes.
The ring reacts to the energy of the people around it. So if somebody is like, yeah, I'm helping, it'll be like, no, you're not. But if you're like, I'm helping, the ring will be like, well, thank goodness you're here.
Okay, fair. I mean, I'm into it. Also, Airwave was great. But again, like, I did feel that was another moment where I was like, this is clearly, like, Amanda outlining her plan so specifically. They absolutely are recording this plan. which is fine, but it was just 5 issues meant that things were a little rushed, or 4 issues meant that things were a little rushed, and I do believe that some of the setup that we get to in here is probably in just something that I haven't read, and I really wish that there were either more editor's notes just pointing out what like when somebody is like, and I did this thing, that they would say where that happened so I can go back, but also that this book started with a read order.
What a weird way to set apart your strategy, to say, oh, well, if you enjoyed this, go and look at these other things. But instead to say, did you read this, or are you planning on reading this? Here's what is necessary for the story to be so powerful. I kind of feel like this and All In were opposite books. Also, the fact that All In is called All In or AI. All In is my book of 2024 at the moment, and I really challenge Marvel to steal it back because, like, you know, I'm gonna for the rest of my life think of Mighty Thor number 12, which is the All Mother, or I'm gonna think of God, what are books that really fucked me up? New X-Men 146 is, I think, the single darkest moment in comic book history. Maybe Morpheus Traveling to Hell or The Necropolis. There are so few books that when I think of them, I am like humbled at what they did as I am at All In.
I respect that. Real quick to answer Dreamer and DC's comics. I know this is a weird question to ask, but do either of you play video games? If you do, I'm about to start a petition to put Dreamer in multiverses. I do play video games. I do sometimes play multiverses. I would love to see Dreamer in that. I also would take another, maybe not Injustice, but let's do everything from Injustice with just a new storyline. Actually, something like Absolute Power. Like, take something like Absolute Power and maybe have Amanda Waller be like, yeah, I made them do Fight Club. I think that's a very, like, for one thing, that's a very video game thing where you're like, that's never going to happen in the comics. But yes, I think Dreamer in a fighter would be really fascinating, both because artistically you could make really cool stuff happen, but also, and especially if it were something like Injustice, you could still have my girl Nicole Maines come in and do the voice work, and that would be super cool to me. As for All In, I think to have the experience that you had, you have to have the experience that you've had with DC. But I did not in any way dislike this. I would say, I think Absolute Power 4 is my pick of the week, just because, like, I invested in this event and this was the payoff and it was beautiful and god damn it, the art is so good. And everybody's so hot.
It is. I mean, porn top to bottom. So few people make Hal Jordan look like sexy. He's always handsome, but sexy, that is rare. Like he looked in this.
Yeah. I mean, Dick Grayson looks phenomenal. Batman with the stubble looks really good. Wonder Woman is just stunning. I even, for as fucking cheesy as I think he is, think that Oliver Queen looked gorgeous.
I knew as soon as you said cheesy, I was like, yeah, my least favorite DC hero. Yep.
Yeah, he looks gorgeous, though. I mean, like, the splash page where everybody gets their powers back, they all look hot. I mean, there's just so many great things. Even the way he draws Amanda Waller, I mean, she's not, like, sexy, but her presence doesn't fuck around. It is, if you love a Dami Mommy, I would in no way have trouble understanding why you were into Amanda Waller in this book specifically. All around, just absolutely fantastic. All In, I feel there is maybe a layer or two of this that I don't know the background in or understand that.
Yeah, okay, maybe.
Yeah, and that has to be okay. Like, that has to be. This is the thing. This is the other side of the comics equation. Editors, writers, creators, overall, the people publishing these books have to do their best to make them accessible. They also should, I believe, honor the fact that they kind of become inaccessible when you are talking about 6+ decades of continuity and wanting to honor that all the time. At a certain point, you do have to say to any potential reader, you're gonna have to do some footwork. You might miss out on a couple things. The point of this medium is that it can be reread. And I should say the point of this medium today, because it was not the original point of this medium when people did not always save their issues, when people did not get access to back issues.
Hashtag pulp comics.
Nowadays, we're much more comfortable saying, like, hey, you can go back and read. Again, like with Absolute, I wish this had a few more editor's notes and references, because I don't know what I don't know here, but I know I'm missing something.
It's so fascinating because when you think about the idea that Storm is being invited by Eternity at the end of Storm to become something greater than she is, we recognize it as a step up for a character that is willing to accept the pressure being put on her. When we see Amanda Waller do it, we see it as a woman seeking power that she is not entitled to. Tertiarily, when somebody like Darkseid does it, we see it as like, oh, of course, it's, problematic white godhood ascendancy problems, which is weird because I don't know that I would have described Darkseid as white, but I guess he kind of is. He's got like white man, everything is my property problems. So, when I think about Absolute Power #4, and I think about the way Dreamer just put the thoughts of Amanda Waller just out of reach, that's such a promise given on the Suicide Squad miniseries that led into Absolute Power, which I now think was, unavoidable. It was like literally required reading. Amanda Waller has this moment in Ab Power 4 where she's holding the kryptonite, and she seems so powerful, but then it turns out she never was. The heroes always had time travel ready to go. Or, hourglass power. Sorry about it. The big hitch being the Amazos were weak because they didn't have fortitude. I don't know. I think Absolute Power cleaned up a little too fast. But what All In did was continue that thread right away. This is Justice League Unlimited. All of you are here because you matter. Simultaneously, though, I think you need to care about Booster Gold. And my level of affection for Booster Gold is medium at best. I recognize what he means to the bigger world of fandom and what he represents to the argument of what a character can become when they are absorbed from another company. But at the same time, one of my concerns about putting so much on Booster Gold and time travel does become, what are we going to know? What is going to be real? Is this going to be something that's very convenient for a new reader like TK? And if it is, will it become confusing to someone like me who has expectations, or vice versa? Will the expectations begat a positive experience, and somebody like TK will find himself kind of in the dust?
And you worry about that for future issues?
Yeah, I really worry. My favorite moment of all of Absolute Power #4 was the powers came back, but they didn't go back to all the right people, and we don't know where some of them are. Holy shit. Are you telling me there's a possibility that Signal got like Supergirl powers? Are you telling me that there is a chance that Airwave is secretly sitting on like Eclipso powers? Like, what is the secret reveal here? That was so promising. And to carry that directly into All In, where Darkseid himself is now the Spectre and has the Eclipso Stone, and like there are so many elements of this that really truly transcend the possibilities that we're going to get, where I know I'm more excited than I'm going to be a year from now. Because right now I'm thinking about what we could get, and a year from now I'm going to be thinking about what we could have gotten.
So we did not get any confirmed person having the wrong powers.
No, we did not.
And it looks like when you look at that splash page, everybody's fine. Everybody has the power they're supposed to have.
At the moment, yeah.
Yeah. So that's very interesting. Yeah, I mean, you know, and I know the Omega is an important symbol for DC lore and stuff, but again, it's just kind of, I don't quite know. I wish there had been some emphasis on that, especially with the reveal of the Omega ring and Omega. Is that a core, or is that, are those Omega lanterns?
So the Omega symbol is a symbol of apocalypse,
Right.
and it's just, if you see it, bad.
But then was that a core?
I wonder if it's meant to represent Legion. So, like, I know you don't do Legion so much, but Legion is what if Guardians only took place in the future?
Which Guardians also did.
But, like, only.
Okay.
And sometimes came to the present.
Okay.
They have really cool Green Lantern rings. They're yellow. There is a Legion core ring that is really cool and really rare and kind of hard to find. One of the things that I really do recognize about this is you probably said to yourself, who the fuck is Yaxis?
I figured it's just his name, and they you know, don't call him that a lot.
No, it's one of those things like you know, whenever they're like, oh, Gallon, and like,
yeah.
Galactus,
Right.
but...
Well, and only Taya does that now. I think that's actually a great example, because it's great that he has a name and everything, but Reed Richards is never like, Gallon, cut it out. It really only happened when Taya showed up, because that's his mom. But yes, that one, context clues were abundant enough for that particular thing. And that's what I'm talking about. Like, it's okay, guys. You can write like that. You don't have to, I don't need an editor's note. If you do it the right way and show me the right people saying the name, I'll pick up that's his first name, and that Darkseid is his, is it Darkseid or Darkseid?
It's Darkseid.
Okay.
It's like, it's German.
Right.
It's like Darkseid.
Right. You know, I can figure that out. So, you know, I respect when we as a creative community can agree, I'm not going to write clunky writing in order to use this name, and you're going to work a little hard and figure it out from the clues that I'm leaving you. I do feel like we can do that. I believe in us all. Why one needs the Spectre and then the Eclipso stone to answer the question was a little bit confusing to me, in terms of like, is there... And hey, listen, I read everything Marvel ever published, and I did not understand what was going on during Original Sin. I did not understand what all of the secrets were. What?
So the Eclipso stone represents the duality of man.
Same.
It's both sides of you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And Darkseid is clearly told to be the representative of making death in this world. But Spectre is the existence of justice for those who were wronged in death. He's not revenge, he's justice. And Darkseid kind of represents the absolute...
I love you, Kevo.
The duoladine of man, yes. Yes. And so Darkseid represents the thing that brings death unfairly.
Okay.
And so he needed the Eclipso stone to be able to bond the Spectre the embodiment of getting revenge for death to him. And then he needed a miracle machine, miracle being a term in DC.
Yeah.
He needed a miracle machine to make a wish to make it happen.
Why do you want to do any of this stuff?
Because he is the bringer of death, so he can never know death. If Darkseid dies, no matter what, Darkseid's coming back.
Right. Yeah, I still am not 100% on this.
It's like, what if Hunger came up to Galactus and was like, you can't be Hunger anymore?
No, I know. I get all that. It's more that he's like, there's a question that I need answered, that this is the only thing that can do it.
That's, I think, the event, genuinely, because what you're bringing up isn't a question that's ever been answered in the entirety of DC.
And so that's where things become a thing, where it's like, I don't know if I don't know what's happening, or if this is what the point, like, if I'm supposed to read and find out. Like, that's where things get a little bit confusing. And it is something, you know, I'm a huge fan of the works of Brandon Sanderson, who has been digest style releasing the chapters of his upcoming novel. And something that Sanderson does is just sit at cons. He does this a lot less now, but he spent his first 10 years sitting at cons, answering your lore questions and answering your continuity questions and answering your mechanics of the universe questions. And when he felt it was important, he would say to you, read and find out. And what it has done is allow you to, when you have these moments, sort of go look up the tagged things. Like, you find the tag for like the planet that the book takes place on that you want to know about, or like the power that's being used, and then you look through the questions, and you often find your answers. I wish comics had kind of a system like that. Granted, the continuity is much more complicated, but that was what kept this from being my most amazing title. Is just, this is lore and continuity deep and heavy, and it is a little uncompromising in shepherding you through that. Last question. This splash panel of all the Omega people, are these people? Would I recognize any of these people? Do you recognize any of these people?
It's
Legion. Is that blonde Supergirl? Is that Wolf?
It's just Legion.
Is that who it is?
Yeah.
Okay. When was the last time they were seen? Does that matter?
Like last month?
Oh, okay. He even says My Legion. I'm seeing that now, but I didn't get that reference.
It's tough because, like, you know, many a homosexual.
Yeah.
I was a very confused young man and had a lot of horrible ideas about reality, and a number of very smart, handsome gay men came to my rescue, and one of them happened to be a foremost mentor on Legion. And when I was 18 years old, the guy who won Comic Book Resources Forum's X-Men Poster of the Year was like, listen, you are so desperate for affection, attention, and approval. I'm going to give you all of it, because if I don't, you're going to find a horrible man. But listen, you also have to like Legion, and if you don't, it will be a problem. And he certainly never said those words, but he made enough Legion references over the last 22 years that if I had not started reading Legion, I would find myself incapable of communicating with this man. When you think about Legion, you need to be thinking about the most magical, special, but like fandom-inducing elements of the Marvel Universe. There are so few things in the Marvel Universe that have fandom like Legion does, the Legion of Superheroes, which sometimes features Superboy, which sometimes takes place 3,000 years in the future. It is like being a fan of the Runaways, but imagine the Runaways had X-Men level canon. It is an honor to be a Legion fan, and truthfully, the biggest my Legion fandom goes is I have the Legion ring, but you know, seeing somebody like Mark Waid and somebody like Scott Snyder, Scott Snyder, who is the man I want to be. If Scott Snyder would choose to wake up gay tomorrow, I would just assume his life. seeing them take the time to invest in these sorts of stories and these ideas, it really makes me excited about the future of DC in a way that I'm always excited about Marvel. Marvel doesn't have to do much to get me excited about the world outside my door, but DC and its love of Amazos and Airwave uses the Wi-Fi can sometimes get kind of silly and a little tough to absorb in the same way that I absorb Daredevil is a blind man who will beat the shit out of anybody who got through the legal system. I identify with that, And so I don't know. Absolute Batman is the most excited I have been about a number one in maybe 20 years or something. And I am going to Midtown Comics on the day it's released because I am so excited about Absolute Batman. I can barely form human language. I got a job at a comic shop when they were doing, God, what was that called? All-Star Batman. I got a job just before All-Star Batman, and so of course I have every cover of 1 through 4 100 times. But man, Absolute Batman is the most excited I have been about anything in since these two gentlemen, probably.
So before we go further, I just want to answer Dreamer and DC Comics question. What do you think is a good starting point for DC Comics? Do you think Suicide Squad is a good place, or what would be where would you start?
It's really tough because one of the biggest things for me about DC Comics as a way to jump in would be through the incredible depth of accessible origin stories.
Yeah.
I would jump in with things like Long Halloween. I would jump in with things like Dark Victory. But one of the things that I've enjoyed the most is I started a read through with Alan Scott and had a little bit of trouble getting through Golden Age DC, but Silver Age DC, for all of its misogyny, racism, homophobia, xenophobia, and more, has some lovely stories. So I would find a list of the least problematic and best stories of whatever character it is you love. If you love Dreamer, yeah, I would say that Suicide Squad run was amazing.
I'll also say if you read all of Absolute Power, which compared to a lot of stuff is not that much, for me that has been we didn't cover every Absolute Power issue for the show. And I therefore didn't read all of them, but we covered a lot, not just the main book, but a lot of the accessory tie-in titles. And there are a few more that I want to read to flesh this all out. But that has actually been kind of the crux of me learning about DC. Today, what's going on today in DC. And they actually, I think, really do a great job. So potentially if you want to just start getting on board with what's happening today, I think that, reading through all of Absolute Power and the accessory titles would be really great. As for gay male superheroes, we have the bisexual Superman, Jonathan Kent and his boyfriend. We've got Alan Scott.
Yeah, I just want to be the biggest faggot on the planet for a minute.
Go.
Alan Scott, I was 6 and I was in Pathmark and there was a reprint. Pathmark, by the way, being a Northeast grocery store, which was ultimately bought by A&P, the Great Atlantic and Pacific Trading Company, right? I saw... What, Kevin?
R.I.P. to both.
Truly, if you are a Jersey boy and you have not been to a Pathmark, I don't know you. Go to the Food Lion, I guess. But I think about what Green Lantern meant to me, and when I got that reprint of DC Showcase and I fell in love with Green Lantern and then found out there wasn't just a gay Green Lantern, but he was the hallmark of all gay characters. Of course, Midnighter and Apollo, who are such important elements of the DC universe. I love Robin, I love Superboy, but I have been on a weird journey this year, and I feel like a Dreamer in DC Comics, this is such a dumb thing to say, but I really feel like the best gay DC heroes are the ones you apply gayness to. when I read Wayne Family Adventures, I don't read Bruce as a straight man because Bruce's heterosexuality really isn't an important part of that story. Instead, what's an important part of that story is that he plays daddy to a number of 18-ish year old gay men, and it does it for me. So on a continuity level, for me, the most important queer character in DC is Alan Scott, who is the man I hope to wake up one morning and be. I hope to be so strong that Jade is my daughter, and I hope to be so brave that Hal Jordan looks up to me, and I hope to be so creative that Kyle Rayner is proud that I came before him. But if you're asking me what gay man at DC I am, I'm Bruce Wayne, the gayest man at DC, and I just don't think that other than Bruce Wayne and Matt Murdock, I really relate to a whole lot of male comic book characters.
Respect.
I really relate to the incredible female characters of comicdom as a rule.
Yeah.
Phoenix, Elektra, and Talia. Those are my three biggies. If there were a comic book character who does identify as queer that I definitely feel very connected to, it's John Constantine. I feel like I maybe come into people's lives and then everything goes horribly wrong for them for the next 10 years and then they die. And so that is definitely frustration. And, you know, that means TK only has 6 years left.
You heard it here first, folks.
So I love the question because when I think about what I look for in a character that looks like me or feels like me, I guess it's like also characters like Black Tarantula and MC2, super buff Latino guys, or silly as it sounds, yeah, I want to thank Pythia from Drag Race for making me so proud to be Greek for the first time in like so long. You know, when you talk about being Greek, sometimes it gets a little bit bogged down in bankruptcies and stolen artifacts and blah, blah, blah. But Pythia has been such a beautiful voice of being proud of where you came from. And I know she is a drag queen and she certainly doesn't relate to comic books in a direct way, but it's made me feel a whole lot closer to the canonically bisexual iterations of Hercules that have been absolutely dominating everything at Marvel for Hercules. So while I sometimes find myself frustrated that there is a lack of queerdom at Marvel and DC, every now and then a big Greek boy like Hercules comes along and makes me feel real sexy. Or it might be, Hulkling, who, as a guy who went from 300 pounds, like totally body fat, to 140 pounds and like my heart couldn't handle the weight loss, to like, you guys can't see it, but again, my biceps are 10 times the size of my head. I really appreciate a character like Hulkling, who has allowed me to transform and experience iterations of myself. And yeah, so thank you, Dreamer, for asking me to think about some queer stuff. TK, please, by all means, you are so much less sentimental than me. Talk about some queer stuff that doesn't sound romantic.
I don't think I have a lot more queer stuff to talk about. I'm glad you. Well, yeah, it's, boobs.
Oh my God. Why did you just get hotter?
I'm glad you mentioned Constantine. Tim Drake is not straight. I don't know if I know anybody else for DC. But yeah, I mean, but like you, Dreamer, I do look for, my flagship queer characters. And again, like our DC journey here, I wasn't really super focused on like, okay, well, Nico, can we read whatever books the queer characters are in? I really kind of just wanted to be along for the ride. But amusingly enough, the first thing we read was that Alan Scott story. So like, yeah, you took care of it for me. But again, like Absolute Power wound up being perfect because you actually get some really important queer moments with Jonathan Kent.
Well, and if I can just say for 1 second, it is
Yeah.
that Mark Waid is so capable of stepping beside and stepping outside of the straight white male 60-year-old perspective.
Yeah.
Every time he wrote Amanda Waller, I felt the strength of a black woman.
Yeah.
Every time he wrote John Kent, I felt the strength of a young, angry gay man who wanted to break free of the shackles of his heterosexual upbringing. Like, I just truly felt like Mark Waid has, oh God, I don't know. Mark Waid, it's so unfair because he has written all of my favorite comic runs of all time, but like,
No, it's
man,
very fair.
it is-
Sharp content change, because I just want to make sure I ask this question. Was that Granny Goodness yelling at Darkseid?
yes,
Yeah, okay. She, to me, is the most horrifying character in all of comic books.
she is up there.
She's really, really high up there. It's just such an impressive degree. That is such an amazingly horrible character. Just A+ all around. Very fascinating thing. I'm really excited that we did this go through Absolute Power, that we kind of just dove in. And I'm really excited that connects to All In, this next really huge phase for DC, because I really do feel connected to what is happening in the DC universe for the first time in my life.
And that's part of what I love about All In. I love that it's asking us to think about what we think about the DC universe. I love that Darkseid is like, I don't want to fight you people. I want to be bigger than you.
Yeah, he is finally eclipsing even you, Nico, of somebody who is just like, I'm going to get even larger. He said 1,000 feet, Nico. Are you ready to compete with that?
I actually just had a conversation with somebody where like I am sitting 217 right now, which is like on 6'1" for Natty. It's really heavy.
That's large.
I feel really slow when I go upstairs. And my goal is 235. So we're gonna see what happens, and it's gonna be tough. But like Darkseid, man, way to set new standards for Get Large. There's also something really fascinating. TK, if you became a god right now, right this minute, which by the way, you know, to me, since the minute I met you, you always were. But if you became a legitimate one with Poke the Universe powers right now, would you make all of your favorite enemies the cutest they've ever looked?
Very fair question. Very fair question. Probably. Because I'm going to have to look at them while we fight. They might as well be adorable.
You know, I hear that, but what I would actually do is I would make all of my enemies the sexiest versions of themselves that are like, oh no, all I want is a big, strong man. And instead, Darkseid created like a fighty Superman, a fighty Batman, a Wonder Woman that rides bugs instead of invisible jets. And I'm like, well, okay, that's one way to get revenge on your exes. TK, listen, I think a lot of things about you. And yes, you are the ultimate woman, but handsome, you would not ride a giant bug.
I'm looking at it right now. It's not a bug. It's like a thestral. It's a very frightening winged horse with maybe no skin.
It's an ant. It's a big ant.
It has teeth. What? No, this is not an ant.
Fine. I will give you that it is not an ant, but I will not give you that I feel like this is maybe the best version of everybody.
It's certainly a good version. What is happening with Superman's
mullet?
No, his feet and his wrist area. Does he have like lava powers?
I do question why Superman has some unique signature energy going on around him.
Okay. Just as long as I'm not, again, I'm just like, I feel like I'm missing stuff, but I guess not.
And I do want to say that something that is really cool is that whether or not you realize it, Chris Claremont was certainly writing the X-Men on their 15th anniversary, on their 25th anniversary, and on their 30th anniversary. And Scott Snyder getting to write Batman 10 years apart what a cool opportunity for an unbelievable voice. I love very few things in this world the way I love horror. I love being afraid. It is the sexiest thing in the world if you can make me scared. And so few people in this lifetime have caused fear. I'll jump, but a jump scare isn't fear. And when I say that Scott Snyder made me afraid of the dark with American Vampire, God, I mean, I have spent 20 years trying to be as good a writer as this man. And just to know that he is going to return to Batman, one of my favorite 10 voices to ever grace comics, one of my 3 favorite voices to ever grace Batman, just to get to read Absolute Batman with the man next to me is, I feel uniquely entitled. And for as entitled as Scott Snyder feels to get to write Batman for so many years, I get entitled to read it. And so thank you so much. And just knowing that we are moving towards such a dynamic new era of Batman where I don't have to worry about, 1,037 issues of canon. I'm very excited about reading the upcoming Tom Taylor Detective Comics, but how exciting is it to get to read Absolute Batman without the shackles of 1,000 issues of Detective Comics to come before it? I imagine, TK, for you, it levels the playing field in a way that for me, it escalates the playing field.
Yeah, we're gonna have to see. This is one of those things where I'm like, I'm mind open, head empty, no thoughts, smooth brained. And I'm just gonna let the whole thing wash over me. It does kind of like your pitch seems like this is the way it's gonna go, but we've watched comic companies fumble the bag, so like it may not end up like that. I'm excited to find out.
And it's with a very, I don't know, it's almost like a heavy heart that I say goodbye to this episode, because first of all, gutted that, technology took Chad from us, Chad from Gray Malkin. What an incredible opportunity to talk to such a brilliant mind. And we, of course, are going to do an episode with him in the near future. But TK, there is something so revealing about when you have a conversation you didn't expect. Now, we both, of course, expected the room for the genius of Chad. And we had the opportunity to interact with the genius of Kevo as he popped in and out. But the episode I was thinking about having today with you was about facilitating other people's feelings. And instead, like, I got to talk about things with you I don't know, expect that I would talk about, and whether it was the quality of the relationships in the X-Men, the evolution of Storm as a character being put in movie posters in Storm, or the question of what it means to lose everything like Amanda Waller, or to gain everything like the new Trinity in Absolute DC, I'm feeling really jazzed on this week. Even if I'm giving like A-, B+ to everything and then some B-, this might be my A+iest week in a really long time for what it makes me feel about comics.
I like that. I hear that. Yeah, solid week for really making me think. I think there's been a lot of like, I'm just kind of checked out. Checked out is the wrong word, but like I'm really just a passenger here. I'm not really fully engaging with a lot of this stuff. I think big swing taken by Jed MacKay that I was excited to engage with. Still a gorgeous story being told in Storm, just maybe not the one I think is right for it. And then, Absolute Power, how exciting to get to go through an entire DC event and complete it here. And then how exciting in the same week, in the same hour, to start the next one and have it really be one of those like, this is really a big new phase and you can feel it. So just absolutely a blast all around.
I love that perspective, because something I feel like Marvel is so clear to do is always separate the end of the event from the new book launch by 1 week. And DC taking the bold chance to put them together gave me an opportunity to experience this event in a way that I don't feel like Marvel really gives me.
Yeah, I this was really fascinating. I think the only thing is, I guess maybe you would know better. Somebody would know better and not read All In first. But like, again, like just there's so little read order from DC when it seems like so much of this stuff really works on that front. Like you really do want to look at the read order. So that would be the only thing, but like, yeah, this made me think about a lot about our last few Marvel events and how maybe even something as simple as ending and starting in the same week and really telling your audience, like, keep the energy up because we're going here next might help. It would also help if the energy was up in the Marvel events, because by the time we get to the last issue, it's kind of down. But we can talk about that another time.
Well, do you feel that that's what Blood Hunt sought to do with elevating Doctor Doom?
Well, so no, because we're not doing One World Under Doom. We didn't do that at the end of 5. Yeah, like the perfect example, Nico, because I was like, so I guess it would be like the Blade book starts that week too. But no, you actually pointed to exactly what it should be. Like Doom extracts all these promises. And yes, he is technically Sorcerer Supreme, but that's really happening in the background. I would have started One World Under Doom that same week. I would have in that book would have come out the same week as Blood Hunt 5. That would be really cool.
And part of why I'm so excited about the possibility of Marvel and DC maybe learning from each other is because I feel like DC did this event the way I want Marvel to do their events. But in general, Marvel kind of runs a universe the way I would rather see DC run their universe. It's so tough because both companies just lost a shared 4-way trademark this year. They just lost superhero, capital S, lowercase s, capital hyphen, lowercase hyphen, your mom. And one of the things that I feel like they both really had to accept was that the court said no two companies who are direct rivals can control a trademark that ultimately decides the fate of an industry. And I think DC and Marvel thought that they were the only two ways to do anything for 1 trillion years. But like we mentioned earlier, successful indie comics like Kid Riot, The Pride, Young Defenders, there are 1,000 queer, amazing comic books out there, though none are as cool as Kid Riot. And you guys should check them all out. Because for those of you that are looking for more, that are looking for representation and are looking for advanced storytelling, it's out there. And as much as we love to spend all of our time on Marvel and DC, the truth is they are occasionally not pushing the envelope as far as we'd like. You should be looking at creators like Matt Miner, Joe Glass, and more for that sort of perspective. All right, other than just being exceptionally handsomely blonde, where can everybody find you on the internet, TK?
You can find me at TK Elemental. What about you, Nico?
Well, you guys can always find me next to the most handsome producer on the entire internet. Kevo, would you hop into the show? Kevo, where can everybody find you on the internet?
You can find me on the socials at Kevo Really. That's KUVLREALLY.
Don't forget to check out Gray Malkin Lane, which you can find on Twitter, Instagram, and more at Gray Malkin Lane. While it is certainly the address of the X-Men's Xavier Institute, it is so much more than that. There is a world of unbelievable podcasts out there. Do not stop subscribing to us because we're the best. But if you're looking for equally the best, Gray Malkin Lane is out there bringing you unbelievable deep cuts from brilliant voices across the entirety of fandom, but most notably Chad, who we cannot wait to have us on. We cannot wait to have on with us. But if you want to have all of us on, please do. Dreamer in DC Comics, thank you so much for spending your entire evening with us. It has been such an incredible opportunity to get to know you, get to know your fandom, and to get to talk about Dreamer, one of the most fabulous characters in all of DC, and certainly somebody I hope comes to predominate the conversation the same way characters like Spider-Man and Wolverine had. Just because there weren't trans people who got to control the narrative 50 years ago does not mean that trans characters don't control the narrative now, and that's what I'd really love to see. As for me, Nico Action. You guys can follow me at Nico Action, NICOACTION, and Nico Action Music, NICOACTION MUSIC. I've been fighting these allergies for like 3 weeks. I am dying. I do want to say hi to some amazing people out there, like Kev. Hey, thanks for watching. And if you're still watching, just hey, what's up, Jake? And I just want to make sure everybody has a good night. And I can't wait to talk to you all. So 3 things you guys can do for us: comment, like, and subscribe. That algorithm is crazy. Don't do dislikes, but listen. If you hit dislike, it still improves our position in the algorithms. Oh. But 3 things you guys can do for yourselves. Number 1, be brave. It's a spooky, scary world out there, but who you are, that is amazing. Number 2, stay safe, because we want to protect that incredible person. We want to see who you are last as long as you can. But number 3, we want to see you evolve daily, because yesterday you were an amazing person. Today you are the best version of yourself, but tomorrow you're going to be even better. And we want to be the people that are there beside you tomorrow. So until then, stay safe, be brave, evolve daily, and we'll check you.